All right, we're live. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the live webinar today. I'm along with Rich Gibson from HID Global. Pleasure having this time together and talk a little bit about unifying physical and digital identity with a combination of Hyper and HID. So I'm Martin Gallo, Director of Product Management here at Hyper. I have been in the cybersecurity industry for a while and in identity security for the last couple of years. Had the pleasure of spend some time working together with Rich, and I will continue to do so through our partnership with HID. So it's been a pleasure to put all these together, and we want to share a little bit of what are we planning and what can do together in this joint solution. So handing over to you, Rich. You want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thanks, Martin. As Martin mentioned, and I should full disclosure, we have an unfair advantage. We've known each other for, I don't know, 10 years almost, I guess, Martin, going on
Yes,
now.
probably, yeah.
I recently joined HID as Director of Strategic Alliances, in the seat about 4 months. But prior to that, I was working with Martin at Hyper. And then we did a startup together even before that in identity security. So super excited about the discussion today. This is something Martin and I do a lot. So you'll see that, and hopefully that will come through. Yeah. So should we just get into it?
Yes, yes, for sure.
All
Let's kick it
right.
off.
Well, and again, for the audience, full disclosure as well, we have an unfair advantage. We just came back from Identiverse last week, spent a little time there with customers, prospects, partners. So we're, ready for this conversation. I think we had it multiple times at the show. Always an opportunity, I think, to kind of get new knowledge and share kind of what we've been doing. So again, being fairly new to HID, one of the things that struck me as we started to talk about the idea of identity convergence was the tech is very cool. And Martine, I think you'd agree. And again, we started the development at Hyper and continued it on. We love the tech. The tech is cool to talk about, but very quickly, when you talk to customers, the tech conversation moves aside, and now let's talk about the people. And I can tell you, being at the show and just talking to customers, one of the things that really quickly comes up is, as soon as they understand the idea that we're getting to about converged credentials, they're like, great. What about this? And what about these people? And what about this use case? And so I think really it's about the people. And so I think today, Martine, you and I will spend some time talking about how do we bring that value to the people? Because at the end of the day, they're the ones using it. And the tech is the underlying kind of structure of that. Inconsistent access brings friction. This was the message over and over again. In fact, and I'll tell a little story about a bank that I was talking to at the show, but it hurts employees, it hurts IT, it hurts security teams. Everybody is impacted by that because it's a lot of overhead and it's a lot of friction in the system, right? And you got to just deal with that, and it's not a good place for anybody. And when identity is fragmented, trust breaks down as well. And I talked to a person at the show that was talking about all the workarounds that some of their employees were doing. They were a manufacturer and they had a kiosk situation. All of the workarounds that employees were finding to get away from, some of the authentication controls they'd put in, and what a nightmare that was. So I want to start out, Martine, feel free to jump in here. I've got a couple kind of just illustrations of where this comes to life, and I'll talk about a bank that I've spent a little bit of time with, both before the show and at the show. And again, if you know HID, physical security, we are super strong in that, got a lot of offerings. So this bank is all kitted out, right? They've got every doorway access readers, they've got visitor registration systems, they are top notch in what they do for physical security. But when you get to the desktop, so if you get through that kind of gauntlet, right, coming into the door and getting through the visitor registration, getting up on the floor where you're working, then you've got to the laptop or the desktop, and now you're stuck with passwords, and now you're stuck with MFA. And one of the key telling things that one of the employees told me was, he goes, I feel like the building I work in, it trusts me more than the laptop does that I work on, or I feel like the building is easier to get into than my desktop, right? And this is financial security. I mean, it was a high security area that he was working in. And I really thought about that. It just kind of stuck with me. I was like, why is that? I mean, that doesn't feel like it should be that way. And that's where that convergence idea starts to come in. So instead of talking about how we authenticate, it's more like, how do we simplify that identity journey? Because your journey doesn't end when you get through that door, or you get on the elevator, you get into your cube. It doesn't end, right? You got to get on that laptop or that desktop and start your job. So better UX, better compliance, better support, all of that baked into this notion of doorway to desktop. So Martine, like that was one conversation. I had another one with a manufacturer which had a slightly different focus, but any thoughts on that, or just kind of the frustrations that our customers are feeling with that?
No, completely. That resonates completely, and I think it also goes in line with, again, this idea of everyone is talking about this for years, right? Identity is now the perimeter. The perimeter, as used to be like decades ago, is now gone. So the identity, the user accounts are part of the perimeter, but that doesn't that's not a scope only to the digital world, right? And the accounts that you have on your system. It has to do also with how you pair that and how you put that along with the physical access, right? So it's that right when you badge on your facilities, on your office, as well as when you go to the system. And some of the challenges that you having kind of going through has to do also with like this notion of, hey, let's just add another factor on top of it, right? This old way of solving the problem that was, okay, password are bad, yeah, everyone knows it, let's add something on top of it, right? And that created a lot of frustration. So the MFA sprawl, the lack of like a consistent and reliable user experience with MFA is been a topic of discussion for a long time. And yeah, as you say, we already have the technology, right, to solve that, and that's part of what we wanted to talk about. But the challenge is there, right? The organizations are still feeling that pain of like the users having to struggle with that, right? Different access systems, and when they need to basically access the resources, like this notion of, hey, I need to do just another step, just another factor to get into it. So that's a very well-known problem that we face every day.
It's an interesting point. I'll give you a nugget that I didn't think about until I had a conversation with another customer. And it's exactly what you said, Martine. Our knee jerk was, okay, well, we'll just put another factor in, and we'll just do that. And he pulled me aside and he said, look, you don't realize, yes, it's very easy for you to say that, right? But what I've got 80,000 employees that I'm going to now have to either potentially retrain, they're going to have to carry something else, or they're going to have to put something on the phone. He goes, I want you to think about that sentence times 80,000. I've got 80,000 minds to change, 80,000, muscle memory to reverse. He goes, I can't do it. I won't do it. And I think it gets back to the idea of that. How do we understand and operate within the business that it is? What do they have? And what can we layer on, or what can we incrementally put into that doesn't disrupt? And that's why, again, this idea of, what are you already carrying? What do you already have, right? What investment have you made in physical security? Let's leverage that and use that. So you don't have to retrain people. You don't have to, they're not carrying anything extra. That idea it alleviates some of the insurmountable obstacles that some of our customers face if you ask them to go and rework how these, especially, and I'll get into the manufacturing one too, because I think this is interesting. They were a little bit on the different end of the spectrum. So they had a lot of employees that worked in kiosks. And instead of, they were worried about user experience, obviously, right? But their number one thing to me, they said, was productivity. They said, passwords are actually slowing down our productivity. And we've got this unique environment. We've got kiosks for the workers. These are not knowledge workers. These are factory floor frontline workers. There is a churn element of this. There is a overhead that goes with that. How can you help? And again, that idea of that converged credential, following the identity of the user instead of the machine, and especially for these guys, because they don't own the machines. They swap out on, end up on a different kiosk depending on what their work assignment is, really resonated with them. And their big concern really was that retraining. They couldn't ask them to bring in phones or have anything on their phone. They couldn't ask them to carry anything else. They couldn't. So there was a lot of impact when we said, what if you could use what you already have, and it would work
Yeah.
across these. So
Yeah, on top of that, just one comment, but I think something that is an additional challenge is that even when you might want to prioritize like user experience, convenience, productivity, those organizations are highly regulated as well, right? So in some cases, you need to be careful also what choices you provide, because you need to make sure that you are meeting all the different requirements, all your internal policy requirements, as well as the actual like regulations and all that. So yeah, it's tough, it's complex, and we definitely understand the challenges around it.
yeah, and the other thing I want to bring up here is there was, and remember when I said as soon as we have that initial conversation, the tech is cool, but what about, what about, what about? One of the whatabouts was, what about this device that has no USB port, right? We were talking about some of these environments, and it gets very convoluted, very complex, as you mentioned, highly regulated. Sitting down and mapping those, the only common denominator we ended up with a lot of times was that entry badge, that physical access card. So it really, the regulatory overlay, the environmental overlay, right, for a lot of these guys, they don't have a lot of flexibility. They can't just kind of blue sky and say, well, what if we did this and what if we, all of that's kind of baked in with the restrictions they have. So what can we do within that restricted environment? It's a great point. So it's a luxury they don't have, and we can help them solve. And I think, that gets to the larger question. So if we get the what about, and we solve all that, then they say, okay, I've got 80,000 employees, or I've got 200,000 employees, or how do you do this at scale? How do you orchestrate this at scale? Which has always been the challenge if you think about physical devices, getting them into the hands of 80,000 employees. And so, Martine, I know, you've done a lot, I was at HYPR, you've done a lot of work here on orchestration management. Maybe a couple thoughts on, how we help them there, and what challenges specifically customers are facing at scale.
Yes, definitely. That leaves us with the kind of the next visual that is about also what we can deliver together, right? HYPR and HID. So you say, right, converge credentials, that's one challenge. I think we have means to solve it. Now, what happened after, right?
Yeah.
And this has to do with the management. This has to do with the visibility that the organizations need to have into those devices, but also about the user experience, the productivity, and all that. So I think that the big picture is like how to orchestrate all that in a way that it's going to meet all the different needs. And the approach we have been taking, like from HYPR, is basically this idea of like the end-to-end identity, right? Is one credential, is one mechanism, either like the hypermobile app, or like using your mobile device, or in this case one credential that get you to the door, but also to your digital systems, but all that to the lens of like enabling, empowering the user to do it, right? This is an area that you mentioned, right? A very large distributed user and employee base. What we learned talking with customers and different type of organizations across all different vendors is really difficult to maintain, really difficult to manage if you think about like a centralized provisioning process or things like that. So the approach we have been taking is like this idea of, let's take the administration, the visibility, and the management in a single place, right, through HYPR, but let's empower those users to take those actions, right? So what we basically drive our solution towards is one where users can get their badge, right, can get this credential, and can go to the registration process on their own, right? This idea of like a self-managed experience, empower them to go through all those different journeys, and make sure that they enable themselves to access to the right system in the right way, keeping all with the security compliance around, right? And that's also the beauty of like the technology, like what passkeys allow us to do. So it's all about like one credential for everything, but it's also about empowering those users to go through these credentials and manage themselves through that. So the organization, the administrators, the people planning like these things, they need to definitely still worry about how to distribute that, and there's a lot of ways we as a whole can enable and help them do that. But when the user gets that credential, they should be able to go to all the different flows, right? You're still going to have some exceptions, some cases that you will need like your support team to be able to help those users. But the main idea, the core idea is to empower those users to go through all that. And that's proven to be one of the main ways to facilitate and to enable organizations to actually deploy this at scale, right? And this is a little bit of what we're driving and definitely helping organizations to do.
Yeah, I would also share with the team or the audience. I met recently with a distributor for HID, and one of the common pain points coming from customers is exactly that. Like, where do I start? How do I do this? And so we had to develop a playbook that helps them understand just that rollout strategy. The Herculean effort, if you think about changing 80,000 of anything, right, across an organization that doesn't stop, you don't stop the business while you're doing this.
Yeah.
How do you do that at scale? How do you see what's happening? Is it working? Is it not? How do you take the components, piece it out into phases, right? What's logical in that? All of that work kind of we put that together in a playbook so that we can help them execute on that rollout in an organized fashion. Help them with visibility. Help them with if things go wrong, how do you kind of adjust? Where do you kind of those edge cases you just talked about, which you're not going to fit in. You're looking at the 80%. That's the main thing. It's like 80% are going to follow this path. And for the 20%, we're going to have those defined paths, but they're going to take a slightly different path. That again, I get back to the people part of this. It is complex, but when you break it down into its pieces, we can kind of deliver not just the technology, but the actual playbook that goes with that. And that's what I'm excited about because it starts to help it make it more real for our customers. It's daunting when you think about it in the abstract, but if you start to see it on paper, it makes it a little more, digestible, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
So, Martine, I think about, one of the challenges that for customers that want to go passwordless, because that's really what's driving this, right? How do I modernize my identity authentication? One of the challenges for them is, among many, how do I make sure I don't end up in a cul-de-sac? How do I make sure that I'm moving forward? And this is in the overlay of the, like, right? That everything was AI at the show. Everything was, identity verification. Everything is happening now. Future-wise, it's coming now. One of the things that I keep hearing from the customers is how do I make sure I don't put myself in a cul-de-sac or a dead end that I can't modernize even further or get myself on a glide path towards, things that are coming. So let's talk a little bit about how this helps them go forward in the future, because this isn't the end. This is just the beginning, right? Passkeys start to unlock a whole bunch of other things, identity wallets, other things that are coming that we know are coming. How do we think about this in terms of making sure that they're ready for the future?
Yeah, definitely. And this is one of the key points, right? And we say here, right, future, but actually, as you just alluded to it, the technology is here, and the use cases, the needs are here as well. So this is about the present, but building something that can stay in a future where it's continue evolving, right? And the threat landscape continues to evolve. So it's about getting ready for now, but also sustaining that in the future. And I think it resonates along a couple of items that we already touched base on, right? This idea of like converged credentials, try to simplify the user experience, simplify the touch points for the users, make sure the identities follow the user and not the way around. This orchestrated access, right, is about all the different touch points. It's not only about like phishing resistant authentication at the login time, but it's about considering the entire user journey and orchestrating around that, right? So you have to think about the user onboarding and like how you bootstrap that initial credential
Yeah.
in a way where you can validate and verify the user's identity, right? Verify the user, the person behind it, not the account. It has to do with how you recover and how you orchestrate those cases where users might, I don't know, forget the device, lost the device, right? How you recover quickly from that so it doesn't interrupt with their productivity and all that. And it's about also moving forward with a technology that can hold on this evolving threat landscape, right? And that's primarily like our bet and everyone's bet is on passkeys there. So I think that that kind of covers a little bit everything. One of the key things we touch on also, and I believe is really important, is around the compliance as well. And this is changing a little bit the landscape as well for organizations because like happened a couple of months ago already. So NIST standardized on the definition for phishing resistant, and that was transformative because basically enabled the other standardization and compliance body to start building on top of that and making it more easier for everyone to understand and also meet those checkbook of what phishing resistant means and what phishing resistant it is about. So I think also from a compliant perspective, the language is pretty well, the path is pretty well established, and I think it goes along with kind of what we have been talking about.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too, when we talk about future ready, that doesn't mean all new, right? It really means supporting you where you are now, but also moving forward. And I think that's the, when businesses start to think about, well, how do I modernize? It doesn't mean I rip out everything, right, and put everything brand new in. It's what can I support now? How do I have a plan to move forward over time? And how do I make sure that I have that flexibility as the next new thing comes on, right? And they've got to address that. And I think about that FIDO token, that FIDO enabled card with the converged credential being that initial vehicle to start to get them into that lane of being able to, move forward from a future
Yeah.
perspective. Because we don't know what's gonna, like you said, it's happening now, and we don't know what the next 5 minutes are going to be like. But what we do know is if you don't position yourself now, you're not going to be able to react when things happen in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%, 100%, and also kind of that. I think one point was critical that you just mentioned, right? Like this migration path that needs to be like gradual, needs to be phased out. There's no way one solution or a big bang is going to work on any other organization environment. So we talk with companies that went through like mergers and acquisition processes. They have multiple IDPs. They have like disparate systems all over the place with different authentication solutions. So this is also about like establishing that path forward, but also providing a migration path, right? That keeps them on the line without disrupting. So either integrating with like multiple IDPs or like different systems, but having like that same like cohesive user experience across of that. We believe that's also the pattern, the way to do it.
Yeah, we would love to live in that ideal world, right? Clean, single IDP, cloud IDP, and we can talk. That's not where our customers live. I think the technical term is hot mess, right? What they've got to deal with. And we've got to be able to, like you said, give them that user experience, that overlay across the top. And I think the converged credential is a great help to that. So I'm conscious of time. Any parting or closing thoughts, Martine, on your side?
No, this is really exciting. We have been talking about some of these for years. I mean, the industry. I think that being able to participate and be part of like delivering on this actual this mission and on this concept, I think is really exciting for me, for us. I think our partnership is a great way to demonstrate and to show that. And yeah, again, there's multiple paths, multiple ways. We're more than happy to navigate to all those different combinations with our joint customers and the market as a whole.
Yeah, and I would say from my side, having been in the industry a hot minute, this is one of those, probably the only time when I start to talk about the concept and people instantly understand it. I don't have to get into jargon. I don't have to get into deep explanations. Door, desktop, single credential. I get it, right? And we got right into the next series of questions and comments and discovery without having to spend a lot of time. So that alignment is great because again, we've been talking about it for years. It's here now. How do we implement? So super conversation. Happy to talk, as always. Happy to talk with you, Martine. So
it's been a pleasure.
We can leave it there for everybody.
For sure. And if I think we have 4 minutes still left. If anyone has any question, please ask us in the chat. Otherwise, reach myself, any of the other like HID Global and Hyper experts. We are all around. Happy to provide feedback to help understand like the concepts and the things we have been sharing today, and dig deep into like those particularities, use cases that you all might have, as well as understand the underlying technology behind it. Right, that's also part of it.
Great. All right. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks everyone for sharing. Thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure again talking to you, Rich, and thanks everyone for joining.